Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, and so we're going to go on and get started. Uh, Saida, are you ready? All right, I'm not hearing you. Can you test your Saida?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
All right. Okay. Okay. And so first, I just want to say welcome, everyone. It's really an honor and a pleasure uh, to be here. My name is Rodney Strong, and I'm the CEO of Griffin and Strong. And we have our deputy project manager on. And Saida, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I am Saida and I am the Deputy Project Manager.
All right. And then we have our local partner on as well, Miss Veronica Anderson. I see her. How you doing, Veronica?
I'm great, Rodney. How are you?
All right. Well, it's good to see you.
Great.
All right. And oh, I see E on now. E, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm E. I'm the assistant data analyst at the Griffin Strong, and nice to meet you, all of you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. And do we have anyone on Saida from Orange County?
Yes, we do. So we
Can you
have
introduce them,
Sheena.
please?
So we have Sheena Ferguson as well as Tanya Racor. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Did I pronounce that incorrectly? I'm sorry.
That's correct. I go by Tanya, so that's fine.
Oh.
And thank you. I just want to say we do appreciate Griffin and Strong being here today to inform our MWBEs about how they can actually participate in our study. I hope that each of you will partake in it. This is your opportunity to share your experience. They're going to go into detail as to what specifically that you can provide, to them. So we're just asking that you do that, because in 2022, when the study is finished, you want to make sure that you have your input. So to each of you that have taken your time to share and listen so that you can share, we just want to say thank you. And we do appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We really appreciate that, Ms. Ferguson. Without further ado, we're going to go on and get started. We want to keep this on time and be respectful of everyone's time. We are Griffin and Strong is a law and public policy consulting firm, and we've been engaged by Orange County to conduct a disparity study. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our firm. We are a law and public policy consulting firm. We have, five attorneys on board internally. We've got 2 PhD economists. We got a PhD in social psychology and another PhD in anthropology. And so we've got a really qualified team. And we've been in a position where no study that we've ever conducted has been challenged, and no program that we have developed or study or program based on a study that we've conducted has been overturned in court. And so we feel really good about our track record. We've been in business for 29 years now. We can go to the next slide. So I want to introduce you to our project team. And if we go to this very next slide, and there she is. And I'm going to just turn it over to Ms. Anderson and let her say a couple of words about herself. But before I do, let me say I've known her a long time, extremely professional, has tremendous experience in this area, and of course, has done so much in this area. But I just want to let her say a few words, because you need to get to see and know Attorney Anderson.
Hello, I'm Veronica Anderson. I own Anderson and Associates. We are a law firm, but we also provide public policy consulting services as well. We've been in business 21 years, and I have worked with Rodney and Griffin and Strong at the city of Memphis and in Central Florida on disparity studies in the past. I am formally an employee of Orange County Business Development Division. Also worked for the city of Orlando as its Minority and Woman Business Enterprise Coordinator. And then before starting my business, I was appointed by the governor and served in the Office of Supplier Diversity for a few years. Under Governor Childs, I was appointed and I served Buddy McKay for a couple of days, as well as Jeb Bush, those governors. And so I'm very excited about this study in Orange County, and I'm very excited, and I'm welcoming any comments and feedback from the businesses that have experiences doing business with Orange County. So I want you to feel free to open up and share your experience, because the goal of this study is to improve and to implement based upon the findings that we help Griffin and Strong locate. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Veronica. I really appreciate you taking that time and letting them know who you are. And then we also have Miss Jessica Adams on, who is MWBE Florida Workforce Professionally Certified Digital Marketing Specialist with a lot of experience in community outreach. And I'm going to let Ms. Adams say a word about herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Adams, and I do have over 10 years of community outreach, especially for minority communities. I've worked with Central Florida, Career Source Central Florida. I've also worked with a lot of nonprofit organizations, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Orange County Black Community, Black History Community and Committee. So I have a lot of experience working with minorities, especially in the area of community outreach.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ms. Adams. And we'll go to our next slide. And we have, I see we still have your old name. So I'm gonna let you, Ajisafi, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. And I believe I saw him a second ago. There he is.
Yes, I'm here.
Just pop back on. And I'm gonna let you introduce yourself with Creative Research Solutions and talk about what you're gonna be doing for us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ajisafi Adejan. I recently changed my name, and I used to go by Travis Tatum. Our role on the project is to conduct the survey of business owners. So we'll be helping Griffin and Strong and Orange County collect information from businesses in the area to help with the anecdotal chapter of the disparity study.
All right, thank you so much, Ajisafi. And Michelle Clark Jenkins is on an airplane right now, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She's the senior director of our consulting group, and she's actually the project manager who leads our projects. And were she not traveling today, she would probably be leading this informational webinar. But she's got a tremendous amount of experience, 12 years of disparity study project management experience. She's worked on over 30 studies at this point. She's done 4 goal settings for the Georgia Department of Transportation and 3 goal settings for Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Got a lot of experience in working with governments post-study. She has an undergraduate degree in anthropology from Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey, and her law degree from New York Law School. And she's been certified in negotiations, and she's a project manager, certified project manager, and she's a certified master in contract compliance administration from the American Contract Compliance Association. So she's got a broad range of experience. And next in line is Dr. Vince Egan, who is not on the line with us, but we're really fortunate to have him. He's got experience on over 120 disparity studies. He has been the expert witness in 6 major cases, including the HB Rowe versus Tippett case, which is the controlling case in one of the major circuits, the Fourth Circuit. He's a member of the Bloomberg Business Week Advisory Council. He's a professor for many years, and he has both a law degree from Harvard and a PhD and an undergraduate degree, both in economics from Georgia State University. Next slide. Dr. Gregory Price is also an economist, and he is our senior economist, and he'll be doing all of our econometric oversight and private sector analysis. He's a very skilled econometrician. He's an applied theorist, so he's got a lot of experience in doing economic forensics. He writes a number of articles. He's done over 20 disparity studies, all with Griffin and Strong. He's the former president of the National Economics Association. He's currently a professor of economics at the University of New Orleans. He's the former chair of the economics department at Morehouse, has his PhD from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Next slide. David Maher is our legal analyst. He also heads up our legal division of our firm. He has served on 14 disparity studies as the legal analyst. He's a litigation specialist, has 20 years of experience in corporate defense, top rated Georgia appellate and labor and employment lawyer. Has tried a number of cases in the appeals courts in Georgia, very strong in appellate law, and actually served as a federal law clerk on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Has his bachelor's in social work with a focus on criminal justice from the University of Wisconsin, and got his law degree in Florida, from Florida State University. Saida Shabano is our deputy project manager, and Saida is right here running things. I'm gonna let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello, I am Saida. I am the deputy project manager. I'm experienced in congressional communication, and I've also worked for the Speaker of the House. I am also skilled in communication, strategy, and data synthesis. Oh my God, I can't say this. Synthesis.
No problem.
Yes, I'll leave that be. And then I got my Bachelor's of Arts from the University of California, Berkeley, and I am so excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Saida. And if we go to our next slide. Sasha Hollingsworth is not on the line, but he is our, he's over our data team. He's our senior data analyst. He's going to be doing all the data cleaning and integration. He's been a data analyst on a number of studies for us, has a degree in computational and applied mathematics with a minor in information technology. Go to the next slide. E is on the line with us, and I'm going to let her say just a little bit about herself, but let me just tell you, she's done tremendous work for us. Has a master's in mathematics from Georgia State University, and she's currently serving as the assistant data analyst on disparity studies for Orange County and several other jurisdictions. E, if you'll say a couple of words.
Hello, everyone. This is E. For this project, I mainly focus on the quantitative analysis part, and I'll be doing all the stuff with those data, including data cleaning or the database transformation. And I'm so happy to meet all of you guys here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, E. We'll go to the next slide. Marcus Garner is a trained journalist, has a master's degree from Syracuse, a BA from Clark Atlanta University, worked for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as a journalist, and in other capacities for many, many years, has served as a communications director for an elected official in DeKalb County, Georgia, has written extensively in a number of magazines, including Governing, American DBE, U.S. Security Post magazine. And the main thing is he's going to be the person who drafts our anecdotal chapter. And so he's going to be our anecdotal analyst. He'll work to craft a narrative based on the anecdotal evidence that we adduce. Next slide. Susan Johnson is over our project administration. She's basically the point person for making sure that everything is under contract, making sure we have all the insurances and other things that are needed to do the work on the project. She's our primary liaison with our client. And of course, you can go on to the next slide. And then the last slide is me. Rodney Strong, and just a little bit about myself. I ran the Minority Business Program. I was director of the Office of Contract Compliance for the City of Atlanta for over 7 years, and was the director at the time that we conducted the first major disparity study in the country, which was the Bremer-Marshall study. And since that time, I started Griffin and Strong, and we've done, studies all over the country in the intervening period. I've also had a lot of experience on major projects. We do supply diversity work on major projects. We just completed the State Farm Arena, which is where the Atlanta Hawks play. We previously did the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I could name a number of other venues that we've worked in. We go to the next slide. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our methodology and our approach. I want to make sure everybody really understands, because I'm sure there might be some people either on this presentation or who will look at this video later and say, well, okay, what is a disparity study and why are you doing a disparity study? And really, it's an objective research tool that helps us determine whether a governmental agency has actively or passively discriminated against certain groups based on their race and gender. Now, discrimination may be what we call the present effects of past discrimination. And you determine that through quantitative, statistical, and qualitative anecdotal evidence, as well as through examining your current policies and procedures and how they're actually implemented. And then the findings of the disparity study will result in recommendations, which will be recommendations to remedy any discrimination or disparities found. The recommendations, if accepted, are intended to be implemented as policy. So we're really involved in the policy aspect of doing the research to determine what policies that the government should adopt. Go to the next slide. So let me talk a little bit about the disparity study process. This is just a quick chart to kind of explain the process. We have the legal analysis, and that's just an analysis of the case law in your jurisdiction, which would be the 11th Circuit. And then we'll do a policies and procedures review, which is really talking to the folk at the county, finding out how they do things, comparing that with what they say in writing, and doing some kind of analysis of that. We'll collect and clean all the data. There's a lot of databases that have to be obtained in terms of payment files and other types of data, and we will collect and clean that data. And then we will conduct an analysis, a relevant market analysis, to determine for the various industry categories, where do you purchase your goods and services? So what is your relevant market for those industry categories? And we'll do a private sector analysis. We'll look and see, well, if minorities are in the marketplace, are they being utilized in the private sector at the level you would expect based on their availability? We'll conduct a disparity analysis, a utilization and threshold analysis, which is basically how much have you spent and who did you spend it with? Threshold, at what levels are most of your contracting? Is it contracts $50,000 and under, $100,000 and above, $1 million and above? That's the threshold. And we'll do an availability analysis, and we'll compare the two to create the disparity analysis. The utilization versus the availability creates the disparity. We have a private sector analysis. Then we have anecdotal evidence collection, which we talked about. Marcus will put that into a report, and then we'll produce a final report with recommendations. So that's generally the process, and just an overview. And we're going to get into each one of these a little bit more detail. So the legal analysis really helps you understand why we're doing this in the first place, because there was a Supreme Court case called City of Richmond versus J.A. Croson, came out in 1989. And it basically said that if you were going to have any type of remedial program to deal with issues of race and gender discrimination in the marketplace, you have to be able to prove that with a level of specificity. And so disparity studies were developed in order to respond to that case. About 6 years later, the Supreme Court ruled in another case, Adarand versus Pena, that the federal government had the same requirement under the 14th Amendment. It was previously thought the Croson decision specifically excluded the federal government. The Adarand case added the federal government and pretty much adopted the same standard, which is called strict scrutiny. And so strict scrutiny is a type of constitutional analysis. It's sort of a first-year law school concept that basically involves determining whether or not any type of race or gender-based action that you take under the 14th Amendment is based on actual evidence. And if the evidence is the proper type of evidence, that is, are you comparing the proper measures of availability versus the actual, utilization in the marketplace? And the methodology is really dictated by the case law. The cases sort of lay out what they think is adequate and what they think is not adequate. And then once you determine that there is a disparity and you link that disparity to some type of identified past discriminatory activity that led to a present effect, or some present policies that continue to have a negative impact on minority or women-owned businesses, and you've used a regression analysis and a statistical significance test to determine that statistically these are valid conclusions, you still have to make sure that any program you develop is what the courts call narrowly tailored. And all that means is that the remedy has to be carefully drawn to have the least possible impact on people who, through no fault of their own, were not discriminated towards, but have to be involved in helping to remedy this past discrimination. And so you have to be careful to try to use race neutral measures where possible, and only use race conscious measures when you determine that it's not effective or efficacious to use a race or gender neutral methodology to remedy any identified disparities that you identify. We can go to the next slide. So we review policies, purchasing policies and procedure, and we're looking for a few things. We conduct interviews to determine if any of the policies and procedures present a barrier to MWBE participation. Sometimes there are barriers that are placed in front of minority and women-owned businesses that are not necessarily conscious, but they're there because for whatever reason you set a very high standard for what is required. That's not necessarily protecting the interests of the county. It's not necessary to have as much bonding or as much insurance or have other kinds of procedures. So you look at, see if any policies and procedures present a barrier to MWBE inclusion. And then you look to see if procurement personnel and the end users understand the policies and procedures as they are written. So you're looking to see, you got a policy, you got a procedure. Do people who are charged with implementing those policies and procedures truly understand them? And then do the procurement practices match Orange County's written policies and procedures? We'll be looking for that. And then what policies and procedures could be modified to promote MWBE inclusion? We'll be making recommendations on that. Next slide. Now, data is really the heart of a disparity study. So one of the things we do is a data assessment. We go in and determine the data sources, and then we collect all the available electronic data. And if there's any manual data, we will provide the manpower to enter the manual data. It used to be that you had to go on site usually to enter manual data. Now most manual data is in the form of PDFs, so usually can be electronically transferred and entered in our offices. But regardless, you have to, we'll do whatever it takes to get the databases together. And then there's a mechanism that E talked about, which is cleaning the data. And then there's filling any data gaps. And sometimes Dr. Price has to intervene in order to come up with a methodology to fill any gaps in the data. And then we're very careful to maintain our chain of evidence, because our motto as a firm is integrity. We always tell the truth. Transparency, we're open about how we do things. We don't have any proprietary methods, okay? And service, we want to be of service to the community and to the client. And so one of the things that we're very big on is to ensure that we maintain a chain of evidence for every change we made to a database. If we had to take PDFs and create a database, we will have in our records the PDFs and where they were entered into the database. If we have a database that we had to make certain adjustments to in order to conduct the analysis, you'll see every iteration of that in our databases. And those will all be turned over to the county at the end of the study, and they'll be available to anyone who wants to challenge the study, because we believe that sunshine is the best way to ensure that you have a legally defensible program. And we're going to keep you, the public, informed. We're going to continue to, produce updates on this. We're going to have a website that's going to be available, and we keep our clients informed. We meet with them regularly. Once we get the databases ready to analyze, we'll have them look at those databases to see if they have any objection to any of the ways that we actually went about preparing those databases before we actually run the databases. So we provide transparency in all of our processes, which is critical as far as we're concerned to doing a quality study. If we can go to that next slide. So one of the things you have to do in a disparity study is you got to determine what the market you're studying is. And based on language that was in the Croson case, it's generally accepted by the courts that you analyze location to determine the geographical location of at least 75% of award dollars, where your award dollars spent. So if you determine that the people who are doing, say, the general construction work for Orange County come from the Orange County metropolitan area, the Orlando, Orange County metropolitan area, then that becomes the relevant market. And you're going to be looking primarily at firms that are in that relevant market. If it might determine that it's the whole state of Florida. People might come from everywhere in the state of Florida. Or you might determine that a lot of firms come to get to 75%. They also come from Georgia and South Carolina into, into Florida, or Georgia and Alabama into Florida. Regardless, you have to make a determination as to what the relevant geographic market is that you're studying. And only firms in the relevant geographic market are going to be included in the study. And we do that by geography, and we also do it by product. So we determine what the products and services that are procured by the county are. And only those firms that provide those goods and services that the county actually purchases are going to be included in the study. That's to ensure that the study is carefully crafted and doesn't lead to being overly broad, which is a term of art that the courts use, that basically means you're looking at folks that aren't really relevant to your analysis. We can go to the next slide. So we also conduct a threshold analysis, and that basically allows us to determine the level of contracting that's done by the county. And it helps us with a couple of things. One, it helps us to determine the capacity needed to perform as a prime contractor to the county. Sometimes you go in to certain entities and find out that there are a lot of small prime contracts. When you look at the average prime contract, it might be only $100,000, $150,000. That means that you have a broad range of firms that could actually be a prime contractor. In other instances, like some state departments of transportation that we've analyzed, in order to be a prime contractor, you have to be able to do a project of $5 million or more. So we're going to be analyzing that because that helps us to determine and make an argument based on capacity. Because one of the things that someone who was attacking a program would be able to say would be, well, you're saying that there is an availability of a certain amount, but these firms that you're claiming are available don't have the capacity to be prime contractors in this particular marketplace. And then finally, we're going to be determining the level of contracting performed by each ethnicity and gender group. So you look at race, ethnicity, gender. And so we'll be looking at all of those things and looking at the level of contracting at every level. We'll also be looking at availability. Firms contained on the county's bidder list, the vendors, the awardees, the subcontractors, all the certified lists, all the third-party lists like the Minority Purchasing Council and the Associated General Contractors, and all these lists of Chamber of Commerce. We're going to be pulling information to try to create a list of available firms in the marketplace. If we can go to the next slide. So we'll basically look at what firms will utilize, prime utilization and subcontractor utilization. Sometimes it's hard to get the subcontractor data, but we'll get the prime data based on awards And we'll also try to look at purchase orders and payment records. And we'll be matching that up to see if there's a delta between the award amount and the payment amount. And for subcontractor utilization, we'll be using every technique possible to try to find out who all the subcontractors were on every project and what the dollars that were spent. Sometimes that requires us to do surveys and other kinds of things. And then we'll do a utilization analysis, which is disaggregated by year and group. So it'll say in a particular year, a number of, in a particular year, firms from a number of different groups had this amount. Say Hispanics in year 2020 received this amount in this category. And so it will list everything disaggregated by year and group. And then the disparity analysis is when we compare the availability analysis to the utilization analysis to develop what we call a disparity index for each work category. And we disaggregate this by year and by study group. And then we perform statistical significance tests. That's just a test to determine if there is enough of a disparity to be significant just based on standard deviations in. And so just do a basic statistical test to determine if there's a statistically significant disparity. We can go to the next slide. And so this next question becomes more subjective in a way, but it's also based on the objective data. And the question is there discrimination in the marketplace outside of the county's procurement? Has race, ethnicity, or gender status affected the utilization of firms in both the public and private sector? So we look at several different factors. We look at public use microsample data to determine self-employment rates. We look at information on the credit market. We look at building permit data. And we look at whether disparities can be explained by factors other than race, ethnicity, and gender status. We do what's called a regression analysis. But for, would this exist? Go to the next slide. So as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing an anecdotal report. One of the things that the courts say is that once you do a statistical analysis, if you determine that there is a factual basis based on your statistical analysis, you still have to link it to identify forms of discrimination based on anecdotal evidence. And we use a number of anecdotal evidence gathering tools. We conduct informational meetings. We conduct anecdotal interviews. We conduct a survey of business owners. That means we send out a survey to you and ask you to fill it out. And for those of you who are on the call who are business owners, we would very much appreciate it if you would respond by responding to our surveys. We're also going to be having public hearings where we basically open it up for you to tell any stories that you've had about your experiences in the marketplace in general or with Orange County in particular. We're going to be conducting focus groups where you can get together and actually talk through some of the issues that you have with us in front of some of your peers, other business owners. We're going to be having meetings with the business, civic, and trade organizations, basically making some determinations as to, asking them to help reach out to their membership, make sure that their membership participates, getting them involved. We also have a dedicated email and a dedicated social media for this project so that you can receive information through social media and so that you can give us information by email if you're not comfortable with informational meetings, anecdotal evidence interviews, public hearings, or focus groups. At least you can send us an email with any of your concerns or comments. So the question then becomes, what are the study outcomes? And what we do is we do several things. Number one, we do an executive summary that summarizes the study. Usually a study is going to be somewhere around 300 pages or more. And so it's a lot to digest. So we do an executive summary so it'll be easy for everyone to understand. We also do recommendations based on the findings and institutional knowledge. And we'll make some best practice recommendations for either innovative race or gender neutral approaches or race or gender conscious remedies as the evidence dictates. And basically, our recommendations are going to be informed by the unique findings of the study and the needs of the county. So we'll be careful to draw some very particularized and specific recommendations based on the experience of Orange County. So after the study is complete, we're not done. We have a process, what we call our study rollout plan. So we review the findings and recommendations with advisors, and then we consult on the release of the study. And then we make a final presentation of the study, which gives you a strong indication on how to move forward. We're going to be saying, hey, this is what we found, and these are the recommendations we have, and everybody's in consensus that this is the way we should go. Oh, one more, go back one, I think. Say. Okay, that's it. You're right. Sorry. Thought we had missed a slide. So, how do you get involved? Well, we would really appreciate those of you who are business owners who are on this call or who review it later. If you would, when you're contacted to be interviewed for anecdotal evidence interviews, if you would assent to that, we would greatly appreciate it. If you would respond by filling out your survey of business owners when you receive it, we would greatly appreciate it. If you would agree to be a part of any focus group, that would be very helpful. When we have public hearings, if you can provide your input there, we would greatly appreciate that. And then, of course, any comments that you want to give us down the road or as you go through the process, any ideas that you have, feel free and please send it to us at orangecountystudy@gspclaw.com. That's orangecountystudy@gspclaw.com, and that's on your screen. All right. So you can find us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can tweet us. And we have a website, dedicated website, orangecountydisparitystudy.com. orangecountydisparitystudy.com has all the dates on it for everything that we're going to be doing in Orange County. Basically gives you all the information that you need to be engaged and involved in the process of helping us coming out with a quality study that's going to make a difference in Orange County. So let's talk a little bit about the project timeline. We started this project in the spring, and we did data assessment, legal review. We're holding our first informational meetings now, and then we've launched the website. And then as we go through the summer, we're going to be completing our policies and procedures review and completing our data collection. And then in the fall, we'll be sending out our survey of business owners, and we'll be preparing our databases. By the winter, we'll be conducting anecdotal evidence interviews. We'll be finalizing our private sector analysis and our statistical disparity analysis. And then late winter, early spring, we'll be finishing up our study findings and recommendations. We'll produce the draft study, and then, of course, later the final study, and then we'll do a final report and a presentation. So we're looking at finishing this up about, next April, around the time that the, well, I guess in Florida, you won't have new things blooming. They'll already be blooming, but springtime, we'll be starting off with a new study that should be complete by early spring of next year. All right. And of course, if you want other information about us, our firm, how to reach us, any of that detail, you can find us on the web at GSPC Law, Griffin and Strong PC Law.com, GSPClaw.com, or on Twitter at Griffin Strong. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over. And I know there are some things that are in the chat. And so I'm going to first ask Saida if she can just check the chat, see if there are any questions in the chat that need to be answered before we open it up for everyone. See, there are 9. I think about 9 comments in the chat. I don't know how many of those are questions. I'll start looking myself. Let's see here.
Well, Anna has actually been answering it, but there is one question from Carlos that said, what would be the best way to express your opinion and experiences in regard to the current policies?
Sure. Well, it's what you're comfortable with. Anecdotal evidence interviews are going to be conducted. And of course, you can certainly volunteer to do an interview, and those will be in-depth, detailed interviews. There'll be a certain amount of randomness to how people are requested for anecdotal evidence interviews. In other words, we do a random stratified sample based on race, ethnicity, and gender. And so it could be that you aren't called for anecdotal evidence interviews, but you certainly can make your comments known if you're comfortable in a public forum at the public hearing. You can certainly also volunteer for the focus groups, which we'll be reaching out broadly for those focus groups, you can send us detailed information about any concerns you have by email, and that will be held confidential. Now, I should mention the fact that anything that we commit to confidentiality, if there's litigation, we would have to turn it over to the courts in those instances, but it wouldn't be something that we would turn over to the county.
Okay, so there's another question from Natalia that said, who hired Griffin and Strong? Was it Orange County?
Yes, we work in for Orange County. Orange County had an RFP, which we responded to, and we were selected. I'm very happy to have been selected, and we're doing this work on behalf of Orange County.
Okay, there's another question from Jorge asking, will you be also looking at the county's MWBE graduate program as part of your study?
Yes, that's part of our purchasing policies and practices review.
Okay, I think that's all the questions in the chat. We can open up the floor to people if they have questions, and I will also be monitoring the chat throughout.
Okay, thank you. I see a new question just came up in the chat from Mr. Young. The airport is not part of this study, so we won't be looking at Greater Orlando Airport Authority as part of the study. Another question just came in that I just popped in and saw, which is, are disparity studies normal for counties to do? Yeah, quite common. We've just completed a study for Cuyahoga County, Ohio. We're doing a study right now for 2 counties, Shelby County, Tennessee, and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. So yeah, counties typically do studies. Recently we completed Fulton County, Georgia. Oh, and what I forget, yesterday we got the study approved by the county commission in Bexar County, Texas. So yeah, it's not unusual for counties to do disparity studies.
Mr. Strong.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Kel Young, Workhorse Temps. I have a question for you. After this study is done, because I happen to have offices in various states, and I've incurred a lot of questionable activity towards my firm and then just in general from particular projects. I deal a lot in the construction realm. My opinion only, and I apologize. All the studies in the world are great. What type of teeth are you putting in once these primes continue to violate a lot of these policies? Meaning, if they're utilizing us for our MBE certs or service disabled vet certs, whatever the case may be, and then when the awards are won, they're going, they are getting their full piece of the pie. And then all of a sudden, they're cutting short on what they're supposed to be paying of our percentage on what they used us to win the award in the first place. what type of teeth, punitive damages are you guys implying that needs to be done? And this is just not Orange County, this is almost nationwide, to prevent this activity from continuing. Because as long as there's no type of teeth involved in this, we can study the moon and there's no repercussion for the prime. And the prime obviously holds all the dollars because we're the small businesses trying to work and get a piece of the pie. So that's my question to you.
Well, that's a good question. And the study itself is a legal requirement in order to have a program at all. So it's a factual predicate, which is just a legal term. It means if you don't have this, if you don't have the data, if you don't have the information, if you can't prove that there's a basis for having a program, you can't have a program. And the program is going to be shaped based on the findings of the study. Having said that, there are certain contract compliance best practices which are very often not implemented in every jurisdiction. I have no way of knowing whether they are or are not in Orange County because we haven't gotten to that point yet in this study. But we're going to be making very strong recommendations with regard to ensuring that there are proper monitoring mechanisms put in place for subcontractors, because oftentimes the subcontracting is where the greatest opportunity for MWBE participation comes in. And so you have to have mechanisms where you're monitoring whether the payments are being made, whether they're being made timely. You got to monitor what's going on the work site. You got to monitor whether or not the billings of the prime are getting out ahead of the work for the dollars that are being paid to the sub. All of those things ought to be done. That's the hard nitty-gritty work of contract compliance. And we're going to be recommending that that be bolstered and enhanced if it is needed to be bolstered and enhanced after we complete the study, because we believe that you have to have an effective mechanism. The problems you outline are very typical, and we see them everywhere, especially if you don't have a strong monitoring mechanism. And so without knowing what the study is going to reveal, I can say that whatever it is, we will be recommending the most robust monitoring mechanisms possible, because even if you have a race neutral program, you still have to monitor what's going on to ensure that people aren't making commitments to firms and then not fulfilling those commitments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've seen a lot of questions pop in, Saida. Some of them kind of long, so I'm gonna let you ask them.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a question from Stanley that said, how long does a typical disparity study last?
Normally it takes about 12 months. They can last a little longer or a little less, but usually it's about 12 months, because by the time you gather all the data, do all the analysis, and have time to review and then tweak, it usually takes you about 12 months. It's very hard to do it in too much less than that.
Okay, so there's another question from Mr. Anderson that says, how far will your recommendations go? Normally these only look at non-management recommendations. We need diversity from ownership down and senior management.
Ask that question one more time. I want to make sure I'm catching the nuances of it.
Yeah, of course. How long will your recommendations go? Normally, these only look at non-management recommendations. We need diversity from ownership down and senior management.
Okay. You know, I'm not 100% sure, Mr. Anderson, about the management. When you say management, if you're talking about the management at the county, we're going to be recommending that county government be structured in such a way that the enforcement mechanisms that are warranted by the study can be enforced aggressively. And so that's certainly the case. If you're talking about the management of the firms in the private sector that tend to be prime contractors, we're going to certainly recommend that there be aggressive monitoring, as I mentioned in the previous answer, so that those firms are held in line. But so that's my basic answer, but feel free right now to ask me any clarifying questions so we can make sure that I'm responding appropriately.
So he also followed up in the chat and said, normally once the engagement commences, then politics govern. How will you deal with this traditional issue?
When you say engagement, I mean, if in terms of our engagement, we're going to be producing an independent report. It will not be influenced by any kind of political machinations. You know, we're going to be producing an independent report. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be based on the data. And so if that's what you're asking, that's how we're going to be responding.
Okay, so there's another question from Ms. Mimi Hall that says, will you be looking at application and renewal process?
Yes, in fact, we just made a recommendation for a client just yesterday, where we recommended that they extend their certification process longer, so that a firm that gets certified will be certified in that particular jurisdiction for a longer period of time, unless they have changes that occur. In other words, if they sell their business or if they change ownership, they would have to submit information about that, but that the renewal process could be extended for a longer period of time before they have to go through a full recertification process. We think that's best practices, and you know, we've been increasingly recommending that.
Great. There's one more question from Ms. Cheryl Richardson that says, from your experience, do you see changes to the county once the studies are done? Will the study look into procurement activities in general?
Yeah, we definitely look at procurement activity in general. Contract compliance is a component that interacts with procurement. In some jurisdictions, it is part of procurement. It is really part of the procurement process. Our general thinking is that best practices are for it to be independent, but we've seen county governments that have had contract compliance and procurement integrated, and it worked fine. But the bottom line on it is that you've got to be concerned about how the procurement process actually works. Are there adequate safeguards to ensure that people are being treated fairly? Are they being solicited fairly? Is there proper outreach? Are there supportive services provided for firms that are trying to do business with the county? Are you monitoring, as we talked about earlier, the actual delivery of an award into actual dollars? Because there's often a delta between the actual dollars that are paid and what the award amount was. You want to find out if that is being monitored carefully. So all of those factors are things that we think are important, and we're going to be working on.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have in the chat at the moment. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Oh, we have another question in the chat. Will an evaluation of the effectiveness of Orange County's 72-hour prompt payment clause to MBEs be a part of this study?
Definitely. And let me just tell you, as somebody who's run a program, I ran the Atlanta program for 7 years. The prompt payment provision is very difficult, because what happens is, if you're a subcontractor, you submit an invoice. The prime contractor comes back and says, well, your invoice wasn't submitted properly. You know, we don't believe, and you got to be that's a delicate process, because you don't want to be in a position where you say to the general contractor, no, you have to pay it, even if the work is not done to satisfaction. Okay. Obviously, if you can't do that. But at the same time, sometimes there is a suggestion that the primes are not being, are deliberately rejecting, you know, the invoices in order to not have to pay within the 72-hour period, or within the whatever period the various prompt payment mechanisms call for. So one of the things we do is we're going to be looking at how often do payments get made within that specified period of time. That's one. Number two, we're going to be doing anecdotal evidence interviews and focus groups, and asking the subcontracting community, what is your experience with getting your payment done promptly? And to the extent that there can be certain modifications in policy or procedure in order to ensure that you're getting paid more quickly, we're going to be recommending those. But we're going to be looking very hard at those issues, and we certainly will be dissecting them to determine where the problem is, because the problem can be in different places in terms of getting paid.
I think that's all the questions in the chat.
Okay.
I have also put in the email address as well as the Disparity Study website in the chat in case anyone has any other questions or would like any information regarding the Disparity Study.
Okay. And then I have anybody else on the team have any comments to make? Veronica or anybody else on the team. If you all don't, that's fine. But if you do, I want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to make those comments. Somebody just put in about the payment being the key to survival and growth. And believe you me, I know what you mean. When the money stops, it's like blood stopping in your veins, everything dies. So, you got to keep the cash flow going. And so Mr. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Mr. Peter Suwa, I just saw that. So definitely whatever we can do, we will be doing. All right. Well, I'm hearing no further questions, and there are no comments from anyone internal to our team. Oh, just got a new question.
Okay, sorry, the question just loaded on my chat. So the question is from Ms. Richardson, and it says, will the study cover underutilized MBE? We find it difficult obtaining a contract with Orange County.
One of the things that we're going to definitely do is make recommendations to do two things. Well, three things at the very minimum. And this is across the board, regardless of what the findings of the study are. We always recommend that clients look at doing more outreach. That is, doing outreach to firms to make sure that firms understand that the county is open to do business. That they understand the process, that they understand what it takes to get, registered, that they understand what the insurance requirements are and the funding requirements, whatever they are. And so we're going to be recommending increased outreach regardless of what the findings of the study are, because that's a race neutral measure that you can always do to increase participation. And so we're going to be recommending that. Another thing that we always recommend is to look at supportive services. And so to the extent that there are smaller businesses, businesses that are unfamiliar with doing business with the county, but they have a desire to do business with the county, we'll certainly recommend that there be a coordinated supportive services effort. So in terms of dealing with underutilized businesses, that's something that we certainly are going to be recommending. I can tell you that now, because the study doesn't have a lot of bearing on that. We're going to be looking at the effectiveness of what's already being done, and then seeing where those things can be improved. That's really the big thing.
Okay, so we have two new questions in the chat. The first one is, would the study cover disparity in MBE prime companies as well as employment diversity?
We are definitely looking at the prime contractors. And so we'll definitely be doing a prime analysis. The employment analysis is not part of this study.
Okay, so there's another question that says, how do you intend create mass awareness about your findings amongst MBE? I think it's how do you intend to create massive awareness about your findings amongst MBE?
Yeah. Well, earlier in my presentation, I laid out, all of the various means that we're using to communicate through a website, through all of our social media outlets. We also use press releases, but we also work with the organizations in the community. And so we're going to be interviewing and speaking with all of the community-based organizations and asking them to amplify our message through their organizations. And that would be the various chambers of commerce, the various minority chambers of commerce, the various women's chambers of commerce, the various associations such as the local chapters of, National Association of Minority Contractors, NAACP, all of those types of non-governmental entities. We're going to be reaching out to them and asking them to reach out to their membership. So we try to amplify our social media, and that's one reason that we have Ms. Adams on board, because she's right there in the local marketplace. She's a communication specialist. She knows what she's doing, and I'll just Ms. Adams, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll just turn it over to you to really elaborate a little bit more on that one point.
Yes, so right now what we're really working on is getting the word out there in the community. And what we will be doing is taking everything that you say into consideration to help us properly craft, policies that will be best to ensure that MWBEs and minorities are being represented with Orange County government. And also, as a communication specialist, like Mr. Strong said, we do have press releases. Also, we utilize social media, and we also send out email blasts with the information regarding what is taking place. So you'll be informed every step of the way.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Adams. And she's local right there in the community.
Yes.
Okay, so there's one more question that says sometimes there's difficulty in mining opportunities, in mining Orange County opportunities. Will that be addressed?
Definitely. Sometimes, it's important to have a good search engine that lays out everything, and we'll be looking at how effective that is. That's part of the outreach process, so we'll certainly be looking at that.
Those are all the questions in the chat at the moment. Oh, there's another one. As an MBE wishing to prime but unable to subcontract seems to be penalized when competing against non-MBE status primes. There's no recognition for being an MBE in the RFP evaluation process. How can that be addressed?
Well, a lot of that is going to be determined by the study itself. I mean, if the study makes a finding that there is a factual predicate for a race conscious program, it very well might be that there would be a change in that, but that's going to be determined based on the actual factual predicate that's, found based on the statistical analysis and the anecdotal evidence that we adduced during the course of the study.
Any other questions?
Saida, this is Sheena. I just wanted to say that I noticed that in the chat, there was someone that's asked if we could go to GOA next. And I just wanted to state that, that they should actually be speaking to the individuals with GOA to talk to them so that they can go out and do a disparity study. I just wanted to put that out there because that particular question was, or I guess it was a comment that a gentleman had made. So I just wanted to make sure that they know to just talk to the individuals there and make sure that they ask them to consider doing the study. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sheena.
All right, so Saida, do you see anything else in the chat?
I don't see anything else.
All right, are there any other comments? Feel free to unmute and ask Any other questions? All right, and finally, our team. Is there anyone else that has any comments on our team or at the county? All right, well, I guess we've exhausted this informational meeting. I want to thank each and every one of you all for participating. We are really happy to be working in Orange County. We're looking forward to meeting many of you as we work through this process. We're so happy to have our local partners on board, particularly Ms. Anderson, who we've known for many years and have a lot of respect for in this area. We just know that she is a tremendous attorney, does it all. And so we just thank you so much for being part of our team. Ms. Anderson, of course, Ms. Adams, we know that you can keep us in the road when it comes to making sure that we're reaching out to the community. And thank you so much for being a part of this. And of course, Ms. Ferguson, we appreciate you for helping to facilitate this and making sure that we had a good kickoff informational meeting. And if there are no more comments or questions, Ada, I am going to say that this meeting is over.
Ashley, Rodney, there is one last question.
All right, that's great.
There is, it's from Mary. Is there any possibility of a startup of WMBE getting contracts too?
Oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, the thing is to identify the opportunity, you know, and determine exactly if you have a product that the county buys or a service that the county procures. The fact that you're a startup is no barrier to winning a project. It's really understanding how the county procurement process works and exactly what they're looking for, and being able to respond effectively with a good quality product and a good competitive price.
All right, there's no more questions in the chat.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thank you all so much. And like I said, we will be moving forward, and hopefully about this time, well, earlier than this time, next spring, we should be completed with this study, and you should be seeing us to roll it out. And any help we can get from you in terms of your input during the anecdotal evidence phase, we would appreciate it.
There is one last question.
Oh, okay.
It says that we don't see any types of services we provide. Do you think that there will be other smaller contracts?
Well, a lot of it depends on, you might provide a service that is subsumed within a larger contract. So one of the reasons people become subcontractors is that they look and they recognize, I'm not capable of performing the large volume that the county requires, but I could be a subcontractor to one of the prime contractors that provides those services. And so that is oftentimes a route you could go. But obviously the county can't purchase things you can't do business with the county if you're not providing a service that they actually provide. That's one of the reasons we do the relevant market analysis.
There was a follow-up comment. She meant what I mean is like one-off contracts.
What I'm thinking, Cheryl is asking about is maybe the smaller contracts where the purchasing agent may have the authority to call like 3 companies to get bids, maybe below the threshold, a certain dollar threshold. Those are kind of like one-off that a user department may need. So, Sheena.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, we've tried to sub on the larger contracts, haven't worked with Orange County yet. We have been primes and subcontractors, but just having a difficult time, getting on the contracts with Orange County as a sub to the bigger contracts. So I'm just asking, because I never see anything like a smaller, like a quote, like other entities.
Yeah, and they do quotes at the county. Whatever your commodity is, you have to know who the purchasing agent is. If I were you, I would go and introduce myself to that purchasing agent and ask if you can, get on their Rolodex or the list that they use when they're going out to get quotes, because typically they have to get at least one of those quotes from a minority or woman-owned firm.
This is Sheena. Ms. Richardson is actually one of our IT firms, and she has actually been very good at participating in terms of finding out the information, in terms of coming to observe procurement committee meetings that I'm on. So she's been doing her part. What we're finding out is in that some of the areas, and this is one that we could possibly look for in terms of improvement, when it comes to our IT firms, they're finding it very difficult to be able to find the services. And so one of the things that the current administration is trying to do is to team up with doing the evaluations. They definitely are looking at the disparity study. They want to see what can we do to make the improvements, because that is one area where you'll find that, as she stated, they don't come out with saying that there's a lot of contracting opportunity, but we're trying to figure out how we can do that. Where is that the case? So that is something that, when we talk, we'll talk about that, but still there is an area for improvement for that, is what Ms. Richardson is talking about.
I would like to just highlight the importance of just being engaged throughout this process. I know it's kind of lengthy. A year-long study is lengthy. Some people get fatigued in the middle of the process, but in order to have great findings and support, we need active participation from the businesses to tell us, what is going on, where to look, how it's impacting you. And if you don't return calls or you don't respond to these meeting requests and you are an observer and not a contributor, then what you're most interested in might not get looked at. So I'm just encouraging everyone, when you see these emails come out, when you get the surveys, when you get the call for an interview, that you participate. I know we're all busy, but we can have a great study if we get active engagement from the community.
Yeah, and I do want to just thank you so much, Veronica, for stepping in, and thank you, Ms. Ferguson, for stepping in to clarify that question for Mrs. Richardson. And I would really like to make sure that we make certain that we talk to Ms. Richardson, that we talk to you in more in-depth, get a real understanding of what the difficulties are, because that's part of our analysis. Where are the barriers like the ones you're describing, so that we can figure out how to make this work, and so we can make really substantive recommendations that make a difference. That's really what we're committed to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, there's no more questions in the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We had this scheduled from 5 to 6:30. Here's another question just popped in. It's probably a little slower on your end.
Yeah, sorry. So is it required to maintain an office in Orange County?
I'm going to let Ms. Ferguson answer that question. I don't know for sure what the requirements are for certification currently.
If you're going, yes. So the question is it required to maintain an office in Orange County? One of our requirements in our ordinance is actually located on our website at www.ocfl.net. Go to the business tab, go to vendor services, and then you're going to go to business development division. You will see that if you're going to be certified with Orange County, you have to be located within the Orlando MSA. So does that mean you have to maintain an office? Yes, you will have to maintain an office in the relevant market area.
And that just to be clear, that's the MSA, not the county. So you could be in one of the contiguous counties.
Thank you. It is our MSA is Orange, Seminole, Lake, or Osceola County. Thank you, Attorney Strong. You're absolutely correct.
All right, I don't see any questions on my end. I don't know if it's slower or not, but do you see any on your end, Rodney?
No, I didn't see anything pop in.
Okay.
So, all right. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We had this scheduled from 5 to 6:30. So everybody gets an extra 15 minutes of your life back. And- all right, thank you all so much. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye.